During the American Civil War, in the countryside of Missouri, a humble farmer named Josey Wales works hard on his farm each day so that he can provide for his beloved family. With the loving support of his wife and young son, Josey Wales Jr., who loves helping his father on the farm, Josey shuts out the chaos of the outside world and builds a uniquely peaceful domestic life, in which he lays low and gives everything he has to the small farm behind his house so that he can provide a better future for his family. One afternoon, as the young boy joyfully helps out on the farm, Josey Sr. beams with pride seeing his son's hard work, and a calm washes over him, thinking the boy will turn out to be a fine young man with an admirable work ethic. A couple of hours later, Mrs. Wales calls out for Josey Jr. and orders him to return home and wash up for supper. The youngster, who doesn't want to leave his farm chores unfinished, reluctantly follows his mother's orders and runs back to the house while Josey Sr. carries on. However, moments later, Josey Sr. sees a column of smoke rise above the surrounding tree lines, and as he tries to process this, he hears the drumming of hoofbeats echoing through the silence, panicking, knowing that the pro-Union vigilantes, Redlegs, led by the cruel Captain Terrell, must be approaching. Hence, the farmer drops everything and runs back to his house as fast as he can, but it's all agonizingly too late. Upon arrival, Josey Sr. sees that his house has been set ablaze, with his young boy still trapped inside and desperately calling out for him, while the soldiers drag away his grief-stricken wife, who hysterically screams on the top of her lungs for her only son. Seeing the horror unfold before his eyes, Josey Sr. rushes to help his family but is unfortunately attacked and momentarily incapacitated by the soldiers. As he lies injured on the ground, Josey Sr. hears the heartbreaking cries of his beloved family as they are horribly tortured to death. The soldiers, who are totally unfazed by the brutal murders, then move on to their next victims without even looking back at the atrocities they caused. In the aftermath, Josey pulls himself up, walks around the remains of his once happy and peaceful family life, and cries out, in pain. Struggling to keep his sanity, Josey drags the body of his beautiful young son out of the rubble of the house, which is now burnt to ashes, and as a final heartbreaking service to his family, proceeds to give them a proper burial. After burying his family along with all of his hopes and dreams, the grief-stricken Josey vainly shoots at the graves, as if to kill death itself that robbed him of not only his family, but the life and identity he had built. It's terrifying how life can totally change in the blink of an eye. From proudly dreaming of his son's future to witnessing his death in just a few minutes. Later, as Josey sits frozen by the unbearable tragedy, a group of pro-Confederate soldiers, bushwhackers, led by William T. Anderson, Bloody Bill, arrives, and after learning of the disaster, they inform him that they are headed to Kansas to face the Redlegs and respond to the calamities they inflicted. Overcome with grief and rage, Josey abandons his once peaceful existence and joins the bushwhackers, not out of political loyalty, but because seeking revenge for his beloved family feels like the only thing that will give his life meaning. Hence, Josey soon begins a new life as a pro-Confederate soldier and integrates with his comrades and the violent life surprisingly quickly. He stays focused and precise on the battlefield, which soon gains him the trust and respect of his fellow soldiers. However, off the battlefield, Josey stays quiet and maintains a respectfully distant relationship with the men, barely engaging in their personal conversations, political discussions, and celebrations after successful raids, because despite everything that surrounds Josey, for him, the war has nothing to do with political ideologies, and every time he shoots a weapon, it's with his flaming house and the horrific cries of his family in mind. With every passing battle, grief and revenge continue to blend in Josey's heart and reshape the once humble farmer, subtly but undeniably, to the point that he can no longer recognize himself. After months of violent battles, Bloody Bill is killed in the field, and Captain Fletcher takes over and leads his men to numerous victories. Eventually, as months pass, the war begins to shift as the bushwhackers' resistance weakens and they suffer heavy losses, which leads to the Redlegs' victory and the conclusion of the war. Soon, the country reforms under the leadership of the pro-Union Army and the political figures behind them. For many of the exhausted bushwhackers who have given everything to support their cause, this end brings a subtle relief, as they can no longer take the increasing loss of their comrades and just want to return home and reunite with their families. However, in contrast, for Josey, the war's end represents one thing and one thing only: Those who have slaughtered his family are now in power. Soon, after the proclamation of peace, Captain Terrell gathers his men and makes an announcement.
All that a fella has to do, raise his right hand and swear as such as you'll be loyal to the United States.
Enticed by the offer of full amnesty, as the men file out to the Union camp, a young soldier named Jamie, who idolizes Josey, notices Josey's reluctance and attempts to stay back with him, until the farmer encourages him to join the rest. Then, before heading out, the captain approaches Josey, who is the only one refusing to surrender.
There's nowhere you can go to get away from him.
I reckon that's true.
At the Union camp, upon their arrival, the bushwhackers are ordered to surrender their weapons and respectfully comply, except a defiant Jamie, who tries to remind everyone of their previous feats until he's given a stern warning by his own men. On the other side of the camp, the new senator welcomes Captain Fletcher and reintroduces him to Captain Terrell.
Captain Terrell is a bloodthirsty son of a...
As the discussion goes on, Captain Fletcher confesses that he has convinced and brought all of his men to the camp except Josey Wales. I mean, whose side is the captain on, really? Then, as Josey monitors the Union camp from afar, he notices suspicious activities and wonders what's going on. Meanwhile, in the camp, the bushwhackers are lined up so that they can give their oath and pledge their loyalty to their country. Outside, finally figuring out that it's all been a setup, Josey rushes over to the camp, hoping to rescue his comrades. Seeing this, the Union soldiers start firing their heavy weapons and kill many of the unarmed bushwhackers. On the other side of the camp, Captain Fletcher is outraged by the ordeal.
You promised me those men would be decently treated.
On the field, Josey takes over a Gatling gun and manages to kill numerous Union soldiers before escaping the ordeal with a wounded Jamie. At the end of the massacre, many Union soldiers and all of the bushwhackers who had accepted surrender in hopes of survival were killed.
A man like Wales lives by the feud. Because of what you did here today, I've got to kill that man.
Elsewhere, now officially labeled an outlaw, Josey and the wounded Jamie decide to head to the safe Indian territories so that Jamie can recuperate well. Hence, they ride cautiously through the woods of the countryside, making sure not to attract attention to themselves. After hours of traveling, the men reach a ferry and buy some food and medical supplies from a nearby store.
Pay me when you see me again, Josey Wales.
Josey and Jamie then board the ferry and cross the lake, but just as they disembark on the other side, Union soldiers arrive and prepare to take the ferry.
Welcome, welcome, gentlemen.
To the shock of everyone, instead of running, Josey stays calm and waits to see the Union soldiers get on the ferry, which drives the soldiers crazy, forcing them to wonder what he's got up his sleeve. Then, Josey and Jamie travel a few hours further and take a break, where Josey steps into father mode and takes care of Jamie's wounds, during which he learns more about the young soldier.
Sang a little song while he sewed it. You know Rose of Alabama, Josey?
A few minutes later, a couple of bounty hunters sneak up on Josey and Jamie and disarm Josey while holding him at gunpoint. Josey and Jamie then continue their journey to the territory, but soon realize there is a cavalry of soldiers waiting ahead of them. Hence, Josey builds a small tent for the injured young man, makes sure he's comfortable, and goes out to survey the soldiers' camp from afar. Josey returns a few minutes later. Josey remains frozen beside Jamie's body, suddenly haunted by the memories of his son, whose life had also been stolen before it truly began, and the weight of losing another life settles on his shoulders. Josey then gathers himself and prepares Jamie's body for burial.
Time of blood and dying, I never question a bit of it. Bluebellies will give you a better burial than I can.
Shocked by the gunshot, the soldiers rush out of their tents and chase the horse around, while Josey uses the distraction to pass through the area undetected. After a few hours of traveling, Josey meets an old Cherokee man named Lone Wadey, who is also against the Union, and takes some rest at his house. Elsewhere, the Union soldiers bury Jamie and discuss their next moves. Meanwhile, on the other side, Josey wakes up feeling more energized and prepares to continue his journey. Sympathizing with the old man, Josey decides to get him a horse and goes to the nearby trading post. There, outside of the shop, Josey is outraged to see the owner abusing his helpless assistant, Little Moonlight, and stares him down. Intimidated by the death stare, the owner quickly returns inside and continues to tend to his Union soldier customers, who quickly overpower the young Navajo girl and attempt to rape her. Luckily, Josey soon enters the post and interrupts the monstrosity, but is recognized by the soldiers, who quickly hold him at gunpoint and attempt to disarm him, dreaming of the $5,000 reward money.
I recognized him too, and I'm doing even split.
However, Josey's instincts kick in, and soon he kills both of them at the speed of light. Then, as the owner whimpers in fear, Josey takes the soldiers' horses and, together with Little Moonlight, reunites with Lone.
Who the hell's this woman?
She was back at the trading post, got in some kind of trouble.
Despite trying as hard as he can, Josey fails to get rid of Lone and Little Moonlight, whom he can't even communicate with without the old man's help, and resigns himself to accepting their company. That night, as the trio sits by a fire, Lone and Josey bond.
Anyway, she says she didn't know this man, Zuki Limmer, was selling liquor.
The next morning, the trio prepares and, with a new plan to head to Texas, start their journey. After hours of traveling, the group arrives in Texas, where Josey meets a hostile old granny named Sarah Turner and her granddaughter, Laura Lee.
We're from Kansas, Jayhawkers, and proud of it.
Ignoring the hostility, Josey buys some supplies at the local store. Despite being distressed by the close call and wishing to remain invisible, Josey holds his composure and leaves the store as soon as he can. Unfortunately, as if that interaction had been a warning, a few seconds later, his anonymity is once again endangered.
It's Josey Wales!
As if choreographed, the town suddenly falls quiet, and everyone holds their breath in anticipation of what will follow. Of course, Josey doesn't try to hide or deny the facts, and instead calls out the soldiers before shooting them down with the help of Lone. Then, before the soldiers can react, Josey and Lone get on their horses and ride away to the desert as fast as they can, causing chaos in the town as everyone runs in every direction, searching for safety. Unfortunately, Little Moonlight is soon identified and attacked by the Union officers, forcing her to stay back in the town. Elsewhere, in the desert, Josey and Lone discuss what had just transpired.
I notice when you get to disliking someone, they ain't around for long either.
Is Josey beginning to trust the old man? A few hours later, Captain Terrell, Captain Fletcher, and their men arrive in Texas and learn of the incident in detail.
Every last mother son of them wants that money you got on Wales' head.
Elsewhere, out in the desert, Lone uses his expertise to survey their surroundings and predicts that horse riders are approaching them. Hence, the duo designs a trap and lies in wait, hoping to successfully blindside the enemy. However, a few minutes later, to the duo's surprise, they learn that the rider following them is Little Moonlight.
I might have killed her.
Oh, I noticed that.
As the reunited trio continues their journey, they reach Camacho territory. The trio then discreetly observes the Comancheros from the top of the hill and learn that they have just attacked a group of Texans, including Granny Sarah, Laura Lee, and killed the men traveling with them. Then, as Granny Sarah cries over her deceased family members, the men surround Laura and proceed to rape her. Unable to stand the violence any longer, Josey prepares to shoot at the men and stop them, but is relieved when their leader interferes.
Fresh, that little gal gonna bring maybe 20 horses.
However, despite the trio's best efforts to remain hidden, Lone is soon caught by the hostile group and dragged along with the rest of their prisoners, cattle, and items they stole. After analyzing and carefully considering the situation, Josey rides to the Comancheros, waving a white flag, which intrigues the robbers. But once he reaches them, he does everything that contradicts the white flag and, without even uttering a word, kills each one of the robbers in a single breath. It seems that Josey cares for others more than he is willing to admit. Then, Josey quickly frees the grateful prisoners. Then, as the group heads away, Josey notices that his journey, which had started as a one-man quest, has now somehow transformed into a bona fide pose composed of a group of people, cattle, a pet, and a wagon full of goods, and wonders how he should feel about it. Despite his best efforts, Josey fails to come up with an answer that makes sense, and hence, once again, resigns himself to accepting his new company. Later, after an exhausting journey, he sits down with them for a meal.
My son's ranch, found before the war near a town called Santa Rio.
Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Later, the group resumes their journey and finally reaches Santo Rio. Hoping to give their group a break, Josey heads into a saloon. Then, seeing how desolate the people in the bar are,
A long time since anybody bought a drink around here. About a long time since we had anything to drink around here.
Josey brings the case of Camacho whiskey and offers free drinks for everyone. Utterly delighted by the generous offer, the grateful people celebrate joyfully and, together with Josey's pose, start to drink.
Listen, Tom Turner said it was a thriving place.
It was. When the silver run out, the thriving run out.
Then, as everyone takes the edge off and relaxes, a bounty hunter walks in.
You know, this isn't necessary. You can just ride on.
Clearly missing the subtle warning in his first interaction with Josey, the bounty hunter returns and attempts to shoot Josey, who quickly shoots him dead. Meanwhile, outside the saloon, seeing his partner's fate, a bounty hunter flees. Then, Josey's group, now also including the people from the saloon, heads out to the ranch in the countryside. After a few hours of traveling through the scorching desert, the group is excited to reach the ranch, and Granny Sarah drops her air of superiority and gets straight to work. That night, after everyone has eaten dinner, the group gathers around a fire playing music, singing, and having fun.
Grandma says it's our home. It is all of ours.
The next day, Josey sits on a small hill by the ranch and quietly observes from afar as everyone, including the dog, does their share to repair their new home by building fences, a barn, a stable, cleaning up the dusty furniture, and collecting firewood.
Did you come all this way to gawk?
However, despite being warmed by the image at the sight of a house being built, his mind can't help but go back to the one that was burnt to the ground, alongside Josey's old identity. Hence, he remains seated for hours trying to work through the confusing emotions that flood him. Should he be allowed to have a new family? A new home that doesn't include his wife and son? Will he be betraying his family if he were to learn to survive without them? He doesn't know. And despite searching his soul for hours, he fails to resolve the boiling conflict inside him. Then, moments later, luckily, and probably for the first time ever, Josey is relieved to hear his name being called out by Granny Sarah, as it forces him out of his spiral and gives him momentary respite. Josey then composes himself and joins the old woman and Laura Lee.
Pa and Daniel died, but they put up a good fight and died the best they could.
Is this a prayer or a curse? Come on, Granny. All of a sudden, Josey notices an injured lone riding back, rushes to help him, and learns that Ten Bears has kidnapped 2 of their men. Then, before he can even respond, the group notices a couple of Comanches surveilling the ranch from the top of the hill and becomes nervous. Then, knowing that war is coming to them, Josey gets straight to business and gives everyone a tour of the ranch, pointing out the best vantage points to shoot from and giving them orders, before sharing his best advice.
The only blind spot is the ceiling. They're gonna get around to it eventually. It looks like you're not gonna make it. Then you gotta get mean. I mean plumb mad dog mean.
Then, Josey decides to explore all of his options and heads out to meet with Ten Bears.
I came here to die with you. Dying ain't so hard for men like you and me. It's living that's hard.
Deeply impressed by the discussion, Ten Bear offers Josey a blood oath and becomes his blood brother. Later, Josey returns to the ranch with the kidnapped men, and everyone welcomes them warmly. In light of the good news, the group sings and dances around a fire and invites Josey to join them, and for the first time, he does not rebuke their request. This time, Josey uses the sound of the joyous laughter to suppress the painful memories of Jamie, who taught him the very song so that he can keep his composure.
Only song I can think of is Rose of Alabama.
Is the Rose of Alabama. Help us out now.
The next morning, Josey rises early and prepares to leave the ranch for good, as he feels like his presence will only end up bringing more trouble to the people. Then, as he bids farewell to Lone and begins his journey, Captain Terrell and his men appear out of nowhere and, seeing that he's alone, challenge him to a gunfight.
You're all alone now.
Not quite alone.
Luckily, albeit for a different army, the group's earlier preparation comes in handy, and they all take their positions inside the ranch to defend Josey. As soon as the gunfight begins and chaos ensues, Josey and his group slaughter all their enemies, except an injured Captain Terrell, who is terrified to realize that his plan had backfired and flees the area, with Josey in tow. After a few minutes of chase, Josey finally catches up with Captain Terrell, and with the cries of his family echoing through his mind, he finally kills the captain, who senselessly robbed him of everything he ever loved and reshaped him to be a violent, conflicted man. However, afterwards, Josey doesn't celebrate this feat as one would expect, and instead, He blankly stares at the captain's lifeless body before heading back to the town. Josey then arrives at the saloon and is amused by the ingenuity of his friends.
That's what happened, and Josey Wales must be dead.
Oh, he is dead.
Nice seeing you, Mr. Wilson.
Despite recognizing Josey at first sight, Captain Fletcher does him a solid and plays along until the Texas Rangers leave. It seems the captain wants to make up for his betrayal.
I think I'll go down to Mexico to try to find it. What do you say, Mr. Wilson?
Then, after everything is said and done, Mr. Wilson leaves everything behind and rides into the sunset. I hope the new name will bring Josey a new peaceful beginning.